The following short story is a fictional account of a possible future event. Enjoy! A proprietary trading firm smelled of stale coffee and ozone. It was the smell of overheating servers and overheating men. Edmund stared at the Bloomberg terminal, his eyes burning. The numbers didn't make sense. Or rather, they made perfect, terrifying sense, but the implications were impossible to accept. Open interest is climbing, the junior analyst next to him whispered, his voice cracking. March delivery. It just crossed 528 million ounces. The COMEX warehouses. The number registered blinked back at him in mocking green pixels. 113 million ounces. It was a math problem a child could solve. There were 5 claims for every single physical ounce of silver sitting in the vaults. For decades, that paper game had worked because nobody actually stood for delivery. They just rolled the contracts, took their cash profits, and played the casino again. But the bluff had been called. The Asian markets are draining the London vaults. The industrials, Tesla, they aren't rolling over. They want the metal. A shout erupted from across the floor. Default rumors. The exchange is halting new buy orders. Edmund watched the spot price, the fake price, gyrate wildly. It was listed at $76.50. But when he tried to source a 1,000-ounce bar for a client from a refiner, the ask price wasn't $76.50. It was not available.
Silver is now unavailable at 76.50. Buy gold! Now it's spiking!
400 miles away, the silence was absolute. Silas working in his garage, radio on in the background. He heard the news break between a country song and a mattress commercial. Reports of a liquidity crisis in the precious metals markets. COMEX officials are meeting on an emergency basis to discuss settlement procedures for the March contract. For 10 years, his brother-in-law, a stockbroker, had laughed at him. Silver doesn't yield anything. Silas. It's a pet rock. You're losing to inflation. Buy the ETF if you want exposure. Silas had never argued. He just bought a few ounces every paycheck. Sometimes generic rounds, sometimes beat-up junk silver dimes, sometimes a shiny 10-ounce bar. He liked the weight of it. It felt honest. It was cold, heavy, and real. It was the only money he owned that wasn't someone else's liability. He looked at the radio. Sounds like the music stopped. Pandemonium. The screen flashed red. Cash settlement only. The exchange had defaulted. They admitted they didn't have the silver. They were forcing contract holders to accept a cash payout at the official closing price. They're paying us out in fiat. A trader screamed, slamming his phone down. I don't want dollars. The dollar is tanking because the bond market is scared. I need the hedge. The paper game had shattered. The illusion that a digital receipt was the same as a physical bar was gone. Edmund watched his portfolio implode. He was long on paper, but the payout he was about to receive was in a currency that was rapidly losing trust. He tried to buy physical gold. Sold out. He tried to buy physical silver online. Error, site crashing. The premium had decoupled. The spot price was irrelevant. The street price was whatever the man holding the metal said it was. It wasn't an apocalypse, but it was a shift in gravity. The wealth didn't vanish, it transferred. It moved from the hands of those who speculated on digital promises to the hands of those who held reality. Silas sat on his porch, watching the sun dip below the cornfields. His phone buzzed. It was his brother-in-law. Silas. You still have those monster boxes? I need a favor. I can pay double spot. Silas looked at the text, then out at the horizon. He didn't text back. He wasn't selling. Not for paper. Not today. He took a Silver Eagle out of his pocket, a 2021 Type 2. He flipped it into the air. It caught the dying light, spinning with a distinct, high-pitched ring that only real money makes, before slapping back into his calloused palm. He was their liquidity now. And the price just went up. Edmund sat in a sleek bar in Manhattan, staring at his banking app. The COMEX had wired him $3.2 million. He was technically rich. He scrolled through a real estate listing for a modest farmhouse upstate, something with a well and a generator. He called the listing agent. "I have $3 million. Edmund snapped. "It doesn't matter," the agent replied. "Unless you have gold, silver, or land, or maybe a massive stockpile of verified commodity futures, they aren't selling." Silas walked into the local hardware and feed store. The owner, Old Man Miller, looked up. The cash-only sign on the register had been crossed out. It now reads "Real goods only. Topsoil, seed for 3 acres, and that used tractor out back." Silas placed a generic, tarnished 10-ounce silver bar on the counter. It landed with a thud. Miller weighed the bar in his hand. He nodded. "Deal. I'll have the boys load it up." The paper price was dead. Marcus, the VP of supply chain for Ether Motors, the world's leading EV manufacturer, wasn't looking at a chart. He was looking at a days of inventory report that was flashing a critical red warning. "We have 72 hours of silver paste," Marcus said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "If we don't get a delivery by Friday, the gigafactory stops. We can't solder the circuit boards. We can't finish the solar roofs. We are dead in the water." He calls the chief financial officer to explain the situation. He replied, "Just pay the premium. I don't care, the spot price is fake. Call the refiners. Offer them $79 an ounce. Offer them $85. Marcus slammed a folder on the table. "I offered $100 this morning. They laughed at me." Marcus called the refiners, then put the phone down quickly. The room went silent. "The refiners are empty," Marcus continued. "Samsung and Apple cleaned out the Swiss vaults 3 days ago. They flew private jets to Zurich and bought everything that wasn't bolted down. They didn't buy contracts. They bought physical bars." A black helicopter touched down on the dusty helipad near the mine entrance. A team of suits stepped out, flanked by private security. They weren't there to negotiate a futures contract. The mine director met them at the gate. "We have a contract with the COMEX," he protested. "We are obligated to send our Doria bars to the refiner for exchange delivery." He handed the director a tablet. "This is a direct purchase order. We are buying your entire output for the next 6 months." "I can't," the director said. "I'll be sued by the exchange." The director looked. The offer wasn't based on the COMEX spot price of $85.50. The offer was $200 per ounce. "Cash up front. Let the exchange sue you," the buyer said. "You can pay the legal fees with the extra $1 billion we're about to wire you. Or, we can let the Chinese battery delegation waiting in that SUV over there outbid us." The director looked at the SUV parked down the road. He looked back at the tablet. "Get the trucks," the director said. By the end of June 2026, the global supply chain had fractured. But no one could buy it. It was a museum exhibit. At industrial price, companies traded silver privately at $150 to $250 per ounce. The short squeeze, the banks that were short on paper realized they were trapped. They couldn't deliver metal they didn't have. And they couldn't buy metal to cover because the miners were selling directly to Apple and Tesla. The Executive Order, July 10, 2026. Citing national security and the critical need for silver in guided missiles, the government issued a new directive. Strategic Resource Classification, silver was designated a strategic metal. Back in Ohio, Silas watched the news. They were talking about hoarding being unpatriotic. They were talking about fair distribution. He walked out to his garden. Under the moonlight, he looked at a patch of disturbed earth near the old oak tree. He hadn't kept his silver in the safe. Not since the first week of the crash. He knew the history. In 1933, they confiscated gold. In 2026, they would want the silver. But they'd have to find it first. He went back inside. He didn't have a savings account. He had his garden, his skills, and his buried insurance policy. The game of musical chairs was over, and he was one of the few who had found a seat. The exit strategy. The biggest mistake a stacker can make in a currency crisis is to sell their silver back for the very currency that is collapsing. If the dollar is hyperinflating or losing trust, selling a silver ounce for $500 is a defeat if that $500 only buys a loaf of bread next week. The goal is not to cash out. The goal is to retain value.